Hi, my name is Neema. I'm 25 years old. I'm basically based from Calicut, Kerala. I work as a consultant or behavioral trainer and a corporate relations officer in Calicut only. And I have been working for the past 10 months in a full time role, like balancing between two responsibilities, my home and my career. I got married in 2022, and that marked my turning point in my life. Before marriage, my mental energy was largely focused on building my career, like pursuing my own goals, like studying, building my own career. But after marriage, I found myself splitting myself into multiple roles, like a full time employee, a wife, a homemaker, all in the same 24 hours.
Neema is one of the several women I spoke to for this episode. I asked them two basic questions. How have the responsibilities changed after marriage? And how do they balance their personal life and professional duties now? All of them feel their workload at home has only increased over the years, involving serious trade offs around learning, personal time, and career. We have numbers to back this up now. An analysis by Mint based on the latest time use survey by the Ministry of Statistics found that married women spend about 27% of their day doing housework. This includes cooking, cleaning, and caregiving. In contrast, unmarried girls and women spend just 6% of their time on these tasks. Interestingly, before marriage, more girls and women are studying, about 73% compared to 58% of boys and men. Even though more women are studying, only 1 in 4 are in paid work after marriage, while over 8 in 10 men are. Here's Neema again.
My workday officially runs from 9 to 6 p.m., but the day doesn't end there. So once I'm home, another set of responsibilities begins, like cooking, cleaning, and also ensuring things to run smoothly for my partner. Men disconnect from the work after reaching home, okay? But in case of women, we often shift from another mode of labor to another mode of unpaid labor. But there is actually no rest button for us. I continue to work because I believe in financial independence. For every woman, financial independence and all the other stable income, self growth, and having an identity, like identity for themselves, is very important. That I've watched the movies like Great Indian Kitchen, Thappad, and Mrs. by in a Hindi movie. So when I watched those movies, if it felt like less a movie but more like a mirror to me, like I can see a whole picture of myself in the movie. I have to say that it shook me emotionally, especially when I was navigating the similar challenges in real life.
We know it, we see it every day. We reap the benefits of the comfort and safety it offers. But do we take a moment to understand the mental and physical effort involved in running a home and a family? No, this is not a sob story about women. It's about the invisible work they do every day. Here's a healthcare worker who preferred to stay anonymous on how motherhood reshaped her career and expectations.
Hi, I'm a 34-year-old public health professional who used to work at healthcare startup. So I'm a mom to a 1-year-old. A mother who's given birth is expected to just know everything and do everything possible for the baby without expecting anything from anyone in the family. When my son wasn't born, I was super convinced that post my mat leave, I would happily just get back to work and leave him behind at home. But the reality check happened in my face when at 6 months I barely had help and my son was to start with solids. Now that he's 1, I feel it's hard for me to get back to a corporate job because these formative years are very crucial for him. So I've decided to take up a different career path, which is way less paying, but I would have more time at hand. The turning point was when I understood that motherhood is somewhat a journey that I have to walk by myself. People will have a lot of advices to give, but the reality is that moms are supposed to do everything without expecting the so-called village to be involved.
Now let's hear from Millie Mishra, an engineer from BITS who's been working for 10 years. She spoke to me about how she's redesigning her work and her day to meet the current moment in her life.
Hi, I'm Millie Mishra, a 35-year-old entrepreneur. I'm based in Belgaum and I work in the children's retail space. I'm also a mother of two children, a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. I am a parent, I'm a partner, I'm a caregiver to our old parents and in laws. I also make my home and I'm the emotional support system for a lot of people in my family. Work is a very important part of my identity, and I think that is what prompts me to keep working. It is very important for me to have a purpose beyond my identity as a mother. Obviously, my working style has changed a lot after motherhood, so you have to let go of perfectionism, you have to let go of sitting in a very particular place to be productive. You are forced to be productive on the go. Mostly my work hours are between the school timing from 8 to 9 a.m. till 2 to 3 p.m. After that, the daughter who goes to preschool, she's back home. So I prefer to get back home after that and we spend the evenings together. I continue working after 8 p.m., 8 to 9 p.m. once the kids have slept and once I have maybe recovered from the work that goes into getting them to sleep.
These stories may be of women who seem privileged because they're educated. They don't have to worry about having a roof on their head or food to put on plate. But the truth is, it is not a class issue. Women across the spectrum face the same expectations of multitasking, caregiving, homemaking, all this without any recognition whatsoever. So, how do we even begin to address this? I spoke to Sunaina Kumar, a senior fellow at Observer Research Foundation, about the importance of unpaid work and how it supports our economy, the current efforts underway to help improve women workforce participation, and how we can make things better for them.
We had a report last year by the government which actually estimated that the economic value of women's unpaid work is from 15 to 17% of India's GDP, which is a staggering figure if you think about it.
It's Friday, July 4th. I'm your host, Apoorva Mittal, and this is the Morning Brief. Here's Sunaina and me. The Time News survey recently came out in February, and one of the point it highlights is just how much time spent by women on unpaid activities, which includes caregiving, jumps to 27% of their day after they get married. And this is just 6% before the marriage. What do you make of these findings broadly?
I think these findings really bring out what we've always known, something which has been staring us in the face, and something which I think it's been convenient to shove under the carpet. And that's where the numbers and the data really, really help. All of this is rooted in the fact that we see caregiving as a woman's job, and especially in India. So I think when we apply tools, we find that, there are estimates that show that even like 2 hour increases that a woman will put in unpaid work at home, domestic work, cooking, cleaning, or caregiving leads to a 10% increase in workforce participation. Now, when we're talking about figures that show up in a country like India, where the new Time Use survey shows that females between the ages of 15 and 59 years are spending about 305 minutes a day on just on domestic work. Then there is additional care work. That is higher than any other country in the world. Despite the fact that we have increasing urbanization, we have higher literacy gains for women in India steadily through the last few decades, and the fact that fertility rates have dramatically dropped. Now, the average woman in India had 3.4 children about 3 decades ago, now has 2 children. So while all those things are on one hand pointing towards the fact that women should be able to participate in paid work much more, they're not. And that is because they still are doing all of the work at home much more than men.
Right. You mentioned consequences. Can you speak about what exactly are the consequences of the current situation that we're in?
The fact is that if we look at the time use survey, it has a very interesting history. It started in 19th century industrial Europe. And it was never meant to be a survey which was supposed to look at gender equality, which it has now become. But it started to see how working class families in countries like England and France were using family budgets, and also how people were using their time in a day. And yet, as more time use surveys happened by 20th century, it slowly started to look at the fact that work, as we think of work, is not just what is done in labor markets as paid work, but work is also what is done within households, which is unpaid work. And it is necessary to measure the economic value of unpaid work, because it really is something that holds up our societies. Care work is the basis on which our societies are built. It's one of the most critical public goods. It's also a public right. Everyone is entitled to care. From the economic point of view, it also supports future workforce. It reduces the burden that governments would face if they had to provide it through paid services. And, as a consequence of all this, what's happened is that countries have finally started undertaking this exercise of calculating what is the contribution to GDP of unpaid care work.
Yeah.
And the good thing is that so has India started to do this. And we had a report last year by the government, which actually estimated that the economic value of women's unpaid work is from 15 to 17% of India's GDP, which is a staggering figure if you think about it.
Absolutely. So is it like a reality that people need to accept, or do we actively need to change these numbers?
I think the fact is that, of course, we're looking at what in policy circles we call a wicked problem, right? Like sometimes climate change is called a wicked problem, where you say, oh, this problem doesn't have a solution. So how do we address it in the first place? So we're looking at patriarchy. We're looking at prevalent norms which have been there for centuries. It's interesting also to see that these norms are not just enforced in India, they're there across developing countries in particular, across Asia in particular. So I did a G20 comparative study on this, and it was really interesting to see the contrast between men and women in different countries. In a country like Germany, women will do 1.6 times more work than men. And in a country like Japan, they will do 3.3 times. South Korea, again, really high. Women are doing about 4.8 times more work than men. In India, that figure is 8 times more than men. And that does not mean that we don't do anything about it because it is persistent. And I think the government also, in the last few years, has taken several initiatives, starting with the Time Use Survey in 2019, doing this exercise again after 5 years, announcing policies around this, putting it out in the public discourse. We also talked about how important it is to build a care economy. How do we make care services and infrastructure for childcare, for elder care, more accessible, more affordable, so that it is available for all? What is the role that governments need to take in it? What is the role that the private sector needs to take in it, so that it is not just a problem that is addressed within a household? If we leave it to that, then we will not make any progress in this.
Yeah, and I'll definitely come back to the policy point. But just, going back to the earlier conversation, of course, we're having this conversation, but what else are we missing when it comes to, overlooking this invisible labor that sustains both households and economies? How can we value it more? And how can we sort of make people understand that this is the pillar of the economy?
That's a very important point. How did we end up talking about this more? And to that, I would really attribute the COVID-19 pandemic, where it sort of brought to our faces the fact that around the world, women do the majority of caregiving at homes. And the second part is that they also make up the majority of care workers, whether that's in healthcare, in childcare, and elder care. And there are estimates by World Bank that say that by 2035, there could be almost 300 million jobs that could be created within care economy. And majority, almost 90% of these jobs would go to women. So it is important that when we talk about care workforce, we talk about how these jobs should not just be underpaid jobs that women undertake because they do not have any other ways and means of supporting themselves. Instead, how is it that we can professionalize care jobs, ensure that they are paid well, that they offer social protection?
Right.
And of course, we should also be talking about the fact that we should have more men in this sector.
So, Sunaina, on the policy front in India, can you talk a little bit about what's being done to reduce the barriers to workforce when it comes to women participation, and if there are any promising examples from other countries that India can emulate?
As far as India's national policies are concerned, I would say that we've taken the first steps towards it in the last couple of years. We now have a national care economy strategy. The government has also said that it is aiming to set up about 17,000 creches by 2026. So next year, all of these would be publicly funded. We do have a national crèche scheme under which, Anganwadi centers fall, which are for working mothers from low income households. This is also to say that we need a lot more, I think, in terms of leave policies. We need to be rethinking how we approach childcare leave, how we approach also elder care leave. How do we have policy initiatives that encourage men to be a part of caregiving, to be on paternity leave, all of those? The second part of your question also was on what are the other countries doing in this. Brazil has brought about policies and laws that recognize care as a right, and the government has taken many steps to provide services, regulate caregiving jobs. Vietnam has done a lot of interesting work where employers are mandated to provide childcare facilities. Within India, states are doing interesting work, and it's not surprising that Kerala is a front runner. They've had a policy, again, post COVID, since 2022, where they have under their livelihoods mission, which is very much about women centered self help groups, the Kudumbashri mission, which is very much talked about and sort of cited and emulated in India and around the world. And there have been policies that the government has taken to address over the last few years. They're very popular programs from Swachh Bharat, where you make toilets available at home, to Ujjwala, which is another very important program taken by the government, right? The fact is that we are all familiar with the image of women in rural India setting off early in the morning with, to collect firewood and then trekking back. Or again, the image of women in rural India or parts of India, even urban, of course, going to collect water. So that's where a program like Jal Jeevan Mission comes in for taps in homes and providing water. Now, all of these are actually programs which are designed to address women's time poverty. And there are other countries other than India also which are doing this. But the thing is that while these programs, the Jal Jeevan Mission, Swachh Bharat, Ujjwala, have now been running for a few years, the gains that we are seeing between the first time you survey 2019 to now in 5 years, 2024, are not enough. So we see a minimal reduction in the time that women are giving for domestic work. And again, it brings us back to the fact that we're still addressing deeply entrenched social norms, which are just difficult to shift. So I would say, there is a lot being done. I wouldn't say there isn't, but a lot more still needs to be done.
So, what do we really want? Let's hear once again from Millie, the bits engineer, entrepreneur, and the mother of two.
policy-wise, support-wise, I think a lot can be done on giving better flexible jobs, better flexible work hours, encouraging companies to set up that kind of a working system. Childcare, in terms of that, having better trusted and a more reputable network of home-based support, nannies, daycares, etc., which are of a better level, which are certified, which go through rigorous checks, is very important, because I think trust is a huge factor when it comes to childcare support.
Most women I spoke to agreed that flexibility is key if we want to see a higher workforce participation by women. However, this is a universal problem. Even in the world's most developed economies where female workforce participation is high, there is no replacement for what women are still expected to do at home. But the gap in time spent on domestic work is also much wider in India. Efforts like the Time Use Survey help surface conversations about the invisible and unpaid work that women do at home. And maybe it makes some of us pause to appreciate the person doing it all every day. This episode was produced by Anirban Chaudhary and me, and sound designer Rajas Nayak. Thank you for listening. And if you liked this episode, do spread the word. All new episodes of the Morning Brief podcast drop every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. It streams on Amazon Prime Music, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts. And of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. Have a great weekend ahead.